Today we will be spending some time reviewing the second ELA unit for marking period 1 in 5th grade. The focus is on reading literature. Students will spend time reading narratives, poetry, and even some drama. Deb Marcantonero and Tim Hart will be walking you through this unit. The goal is that by the end of this video you will come away with a better understanding of what you will be teaching in the second half of the first marking period. We hope this will be informative for you.
Hello everyone, this is Tim Hart. Deb Marcantonero is going to be joining me in this video today. We're going to start by just talking about what you would do to find the 5th grade mapping and assessment document on Google Drive. So you'd open up your email and then you would click on Google Drive and you'd get to this kind of home screen on Google Drive. Now if you haven't already done so, you probably want to go to your search screen and you're going to type in something like 5th grade map. And what should come up is, I'm going to type mapping. Hopefully that helps. Or I'm going to just type map. Gotta love Google Docs. Okay, there it is. So what should come up is the Grade 5 Curriculum Mapping Assessment Guide for 2013-2014. So if you haven't done so already, you're going to want to star it. So next to the actual document and that turns up with the search, it has a little star that's outlined. Click on the star. Now whenever you need to, that document's going to show up in your starred documents, which you'll find right here, and that would allow you to always get to that document quickly if you need to. The other way that you could do that is just by clicking on it and dragging it over into your drive. That's going to drop the document into your drive as well. Okay? So anyway, whichever way you decide to do it, you star it or drop it in your file, either way works. Then you're going to actually open the document, and then here is the 5th grade curriculum map.
Great, we're all on the curriculum map right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit the link that says Literature, Fiction, Poetry, and Drama. This will be the unit that we're focusing on for the second part of the first marking period. This will take you to what we call our UBD document, which is basically your curriculum document that you would probably want to copy out and keep with you. When we do an overview of this document, as you know, we start with our big thoughts and then we work down to the more detailed plans at the end. So today I'm just going to give you a little outline and an overview of what this unit is all about. So the Literature, Fiction, Poetry, and Drama unit will allow your students to gain greater depth of understanding as they approach fiction, poetry, and drama. During this unit, students will use their story elements and point of view to gain meaning as they develop opinions about literary text. Students will use this reading practice as they interpret text and support their thinking through writing. Another goal is to guide students to critique the author's work and to share their feelings and interpretations in their writing. As a result of your efforts, this unit will build stronger readers as the students track story elements and determine the point of view while supporting their original ideas through writing. So right now we're going to go back toward the top of this document and we're going to point out your ELA grade specific standards. As many of you know, we are focusing on the Common Core standards, and focusing on those standards is what has driven us to all these minor revisions and major revisions for the ELA curriculum for 5th grade. So they are listed here, and so you can read them. We've tried to print them out as specifically as possible. And for your information, we also have a link on the map. So if we look back to the 5th grade document map at the bottom, there is a link to the County Regional CCS document. This is a helpful document that has previously been put in our curriculum guide, but it's probably not been referenced too many times. This is a great place to go as a resource. If you look at a certain strand, let's say reading and language, number 1, you would see that there are learning targets available. You would see that they have explained the knowledge level as well as the reasoning level for that. If you went to reading and language 5.2, you would also have more knowledge levels, reasoning levels for each. And you can see how they basically unpack the Common Core standards, saying that it determines the theme of a story, they need to summarize text, they need to explain how characters respond to challenges, explain how a speaker reflects upon a topic. So it really is spelled out a little more concretely in this document. And there are many other benefits of this document, but this document will help those who are not as competent with the standards or don't feel that they really understand them as well, or perhaps aren't sure with what we're trying to get to the focus of. So this is a great place to go if you see a standard and you're not quite sure what our goal is. Please refer to this county document that you can get to as linked off of that curriculum map and spend some time in it, because I think you'll find it very beneficial.
Okay, so now we're going to go back to the UBD document, and we're going to actually go down and talk a little bit about the essential questions and enduring understanding. So I just wanted to point out this first essential question in reading. It says, how does paying attention to literary elements, the details, and the point of view of a story impact your understanding of a text? This is an essential question we lifted directly from that county Common Core document, and this is really the catalyst for the whole unit. The whole unit is sort of centered and designed around this question about how do readers pay attention to those literary elements, the details, the point of view, how do they think about all of those, and how does that impact their understanding? Later in writing, it's also going to be a big part of our writing unit, because one of our enduring understandings that we get from that is that thinkers and writers often write in response to text that they're reading. So the whole focus of this unit really has to do with thinking while you're reading, thinking about literary elements, thinking about details, thinking about point of view, and then responding to those things through writing. This is a skill we want kids to work on. This is something that is important and really at the center of the Common Core standards. We want kids to be engaged in deep thinking about text, and then engaged in writing about thinking about text. So now that we've looked at some of the enduring understandings and essential questions, we're going to actually go and look at some of the things we're going to be doing in our classroom. So if we scroll down and continue looking at the UBD document, we'll see that the learning targets and objectives are there for reading, writing, and speaking and listening. These are, your teaching points that you're going to develop for your lesson plans. And if we keep going down, we'll see there's a section on assessment. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. And then we have our section where the actual meat of the unit comes in, and this is our daily kind of activities that you'll be working with your students in your classroom. So Deb's going to talk a little bit more about the instructional strategies you can work on in your classroom, and then some of the things that we'll be doing towards the beginning of the unit in reading.
So some of the instructional strategies you'll see listed are part of our balanced literacy strategies. There will be a lot of teacher explicit modeling, which will be in reading as well as writing. There will be the use of mentor texts using that gradual release model. Small group strategies can be incorporated with using level text of narrative fiction, stories, articles, poetry, drama of any type can be used. Analytic reading, close reading strategies, text-dependent questions, inquiry-based activities, individual teacher-student conferences should be continued, and, of course, opportunities for sharing, which, of course, will develop the speaking and listening standards that we're working on. And then as we move into the overview, we will be paying close attention to this big concept. Our big question for this unit will be, how does paying attention to the literary elements, the details, and the point of view of a story impact your understanding of a text? This is something we really want to get across to our students. We want students to be cognizant of the fact that these elements, details, point of view, all take place, and we want them to really relate to them and get a deeper sense of the text. So some of the ways that we will be doing this is the bulleted points that are listed. As you see, these are just suggested points. They don't all need to be taught. However, they are suggested. So, for example, readers can use the actions in a text as a window into a character to help us better understand those. That could be a lesson one day. Another one is readers pay attention to the objects that a character keeps near and grows ideas about what kind of person that character is. Possessions that a character keeps near them usually reveal something important to them. So depending on the text that you become familiar with, that you would like to use as your mentor text, some of these will just fall very naturally as a great lesson for you. Also, as we move on, we'll see that teachers will also want to incorporate the essential question, perhaps using a double entry, where they would put the notes from story on one side and their thoughts and opinions on another side. Teacher modeling is recommended at this point to start students off with that. So if you're reading a text, let's say like Frindle, and you wanted to start a double entry, you would possibly put notes about Mrs. Granger on the left, that things that you actually noticed from the text. Students could then put their thinking on the right. What do the dictionary, what do some of those other items in the story represent and tell us about her as a character? So now looking at the unit introduction, once again we're going to start by introducing the essential question. How does paying attention to the literary elements, the details, and the point of view of the story impact your understanding of a text? We're going to lift some items from the Reader's Workshop model from Lucy Calkins, specifically some charts to grow ideas about a character and strategies readers use to grow ideas about characters. These charts have been provided for you. This would be completed charts, what they would look like. You would want to just start with one bullet at a time. All these bullets are not expected to be put on your chart. They are simply there as a reference. So if you chose to make one of these charts or both of these charts, please know that you are not expected to get through all of these teaching points. They are just there for you to use and to see what fits best with your mentor text. Also, we would like you to work on partner talk and to work on that speaking and listening piece. And lower in this document, you'll see how you can teach partners to ask each other questions, what kind of person the character is, and what way he or she is the same or different from other characters, etc. So those bulleted points will also be able to support their thinking and their discussions about the characters, as well as support that speaking standard. And as we go down, we have some other conversational prompts that would help you in their writing, as we want them to take this reading knowledge and what they're learning and to really support that in their writing as they produce their own theories and their own thinking and come up with their own interpretations of what they notice in the text. And then the last bullet will talk about some of the ways you can use those whole class discussions and have that support your teaching as well.
Okay, so in addition to using some of the teachers' college resources that we provided with you, we also wanted to include a lot of stuff that you can do from Reading Street, because it's a resource that we all have available to us, and there's some good stuff in there. So what we did is we came up with some lesson ideas and activities that are standards-based that includes resources from Reading Street. So for this unit, we suggested 4 different stories that you could use at some point in your classroom while teaching this unit, and we suggested maybe using Frindle, the 3th-century woman, Westlandia, and At the Beach. You'll notice that these stories all come from different units within Reading Street. We're not doing Reading Street the same way anymore, where we go and start in Unit 1 and work through the whole text. Instead, we're kind of jumping around and taking bits from here and there. So these are 4 stories that we suggested. If there are other stories that you feel like you like better that are literature stories, so a fiction story, a piece of poetry, or a drama, from Reading Street, go for it and use that instead. But we did develop some lesson ideas and activities based on these stories. So we listed them here below in this document, but you also have another resource available to you as well, and that's if you go back to your curriculum map. Underneath the actual unit, Literature, Fiction, Poetry, and Drama, it says Literature Lesson Planning Document. If you click on that and open it, we have another document that we created, and this is actually something that we use to kind of work on and create the whole unit, but it's something we thought would be helpful for teachers as well. So we took, for example, here we have Frindle. We have a standard that we thought could be taught with this story. We unpack the standard into more of a teaching point. And then we have a suggested activity. Here we also have a skill. Now these are skills from Reading Street. These are skills that go along with the scope and sequence within Reading Street. So you are hitting on some of that as well when you're doing this work with your students. So our thought was, in addition to giving you just the UBD document, we'd also give you this planning document. And we hope that this is going to be something really hands-on that you could use to develop lesson plans for yourself. The other thing that you have available to you, and it's easy to forget about it, but within that county document, there's also a section that says, to assist teaching these standards, students may. And there is a whole bunch of different bullets of different teaching points and activities that you could do within your classroom. These are really good teaching points and really good activities that would work well for trying to achieve and meet some of these standards. So these are things that you can think about as well. Now, some of you might have questions about what kind of resources could I be using during this unit. Now again, we suggested using 4 stories from Reading Street. The purpose isn't to use those 4 stories for the 4 weeks of the unit, though. That would probably be overkill with some of these stories. You want to incorporate other things. Some of the other things that you can incorporate would be some of the leveled readers from your book room, so we gave some suggestions with that here within the document. We also gave some suggestion of additional texts from Reading Street that you could possibly use, and then some other texts, the ones we just pulled, stories that we've used before and stories that we like. Really, bottom line is you can use any kind of piece of literature that you think works to teach some of these standards and to teach some of these teaching points. It depends on who your students are, what you're doing in your classroom, and you can differentiate accordingly with whether you're working with an ECG student or a high flyer in your reading groups, or some of your more struggling readers. You can differentiate the text that students are reading in order to differentiate your instruction. One other note, just something to think about, is when we're talking about this unit, we're also talking about drama. There are a few Reader's Theater texts within Reading Street that you could pull and use to teach this unit, but you might also have to think about using some of those Reader Theater books that you have in your classroom and using them in a slightly different way. And now the focus isn't going to be on just practicing fluency. Instead, the focus would be on actually looking at the text as a piece of literature, analyzing what characters do, what characters say, and how scenes and acts interact with one another. So here we have a sample lesson on perspective and point of view. Now this is an example of what a lesson could look like that could be found within this unit. And we thought it did a nice job of really getting to the heart of what we're trying to teach here. So here you go.
You guys have been working so hard in your reading of historical fiction. And one of the things that I know about your reading historical fiction is that you're the kind of readers that are really trying to push yourself to think more about the text than just what the plot is, than just like what's happening, right? You've been kind of like doing this work of trying to think deeply about what's going on inside of the story. And I know this kind of work that you've been doing, and I thought about you guys a little bit last weekend when I was watching the football game. And when I was watching the football game, one of the things that I was thinking about was the fact that I was just watching the quarterback. I was kind of like zooming in to think like, what is the quarterback going to do now, and where's the quarterback going to throw? But I was with this really good friend of mine who's a total football fanatic. Like, he's a huge fan of the sport. And he knows a lot more about the game. He knows a lot more about paying attention to the very, very specifics of the game. One of the things that he was telling me was that he was telling me all about the offensive players in addition to the quarterback. So he's paying attention to a lot more than just like the main person in the game, but to all the other people in the game. Which leads me to how we can do similar kinds of work inside of our reading, where we pay not only attention to the quarterback, or like the main character of our story, but we can do really smart work about paying attention to everybody in the story, all of the characters in the story, to get a deeper understanding of what's really going on inside of that text. So one of the things that I want to teach you today is that I want to teach you that historical fiction readers, they pay close attention to the role of secondary characters, you know, those minor characters, the character that's not the one, like the quarterback, the one that we know and we learn a lot about. And we can particularly pay attention to certain things. And these are some of the things that we might think about a little bit. We can pay attention to their actions and the effects they have. Like, what are those secondary characters doing, right? And based on what those secondary characters are doing, we can learn a little bit about who they are and how it affects what they're doing. We can also think a little bit about their traits, these secondary characters' traits. We can think a little bit about what they're saying, and of course we can think a little bit about what is their relationship to not only the main character, but their relationship to the problem, like that big conflict that's happening inside the story. So readers, can I show you what I mean? Yeah? So this is the interaction between Bruno and his mom, right when he gets home to find Maria, the family servant, packing all this stuff in the bedroom. You guys remember that part?
So as Deb said earlier, the focus of our writing unit during this time period is really on getting kids to think about what they're reading and to respond and write about what they're reading. We can utilize the strategies we've taught kids already about writing and responding to open-ended questions using trees. But we really want kids engaged in the process of writing about what they're reading, really analyzing their thinking. If they have an idea, kind of exploring it through their writing, trying to find material to support it and evidence to support it from the text, and marshaling that evidence and sharing it with their reader. The focus of this unit, though, isn't in writing a process piece. So it's not a piece of writing that kids are going to be working on for weeks at a time. Kids aren't going to develop one idea about a piece of literature and explore it for weeks at a time. Instead, we're going to be working on what we call flash essays. These are essays that kids do maybe over 2 to 3 class periods. They could do it inside the writer's notebook. They could do it outside the notebook. It's really up to you as a teacher to decide how they're going to be working on it in terms of the space. But you just want kids engaged in multiple short essay experiences where they're exploring different ideas about the text that they're reading through their writing. We've included some teaching points and some anchor charts here that you can pull to use during your writing time. It's also important to remember that this is definitely one of those units where we can have a truly integrated block for reading and writing. Kids could be reading and writing during the same time period during this unit. So it's really something new that kids can explore, really trying to work on exploring and pushing their thinking about what they're reading.
Okay, we're back at the curriculum map, and so hopefully everyone has been able to find the curriculum map and start that. We want you to know that this is a great place to always go back to, and now it's about time to start assessing and thinking about what did I teach my students during this unit. So you'll see in the 4th column, reading model curriculum. Black Stallion will be the copy that you will need to access for the test, and then underneath that you would have a teacher's answer key, and then under that you have a grading key. So those are all there for you. Obviously, if you would like to have copies made, you probably by now have been informed on how to get those done from board office. but the Black Stallion is called Model Curriculum because that has been taken off the Department of Ed site. The answer key, as you can see, is also basically taken from the site, and then the grading guide is something that Tim and I put together to give you a guideline of how we feel would be a good way to guide it. The grading rubric for this would probably be using the PCR rubric that you used in the summative assessment that is available from the box immediately above. So where you see PCR rubric, PCR rubric, that would be the rubric that you're going to do. And also your writing assessment will also be that analytic critique. That would be your writing assessment for that marking period as well. So all the assessments that you are required to do are just in that box, and you should be able to get the assessments and the grading information right there. Also, you'll see that we've added a Google form to the end of this row, and when you are done with this flip video, we would love it if you could complete this Google form and just submit it, and we will take all your information under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you for viewing this video. We hope it was helpful. Please complete the Google form to offer feedback on this unit and a flipped video presentation. You can find this link on the Grade 5 Curriculum Mapping Assessment Guide. Thank you. Have an amazing day.